Okay.
Okay. So we have to decide on our topic, right? So this is the family business podcast. So there's this little tradition, you guys can explain it, of how we're going to decide who gets to pick their topic first. And it entails flipping quarters. Why would we be flipping quarters? BOEYE boys. Tell
Well,
the
this
story.
started as a tradition with my grandfather years ago. We always have a Christmas Eve lunch, which has kind of turned into before Christmas now, but around Christmas lunch where all the BOEYE boys get together and we just have a wonderful time, eat lunch, and then at the end, of course, there's the bill. And whoever loses the coin flip, which we're about ready to do, has to pay the entire bill.
Yep.
How many times have you lost?
Oh, a couple times. I've been pretty lucky, so I'm wondering now, how are we doing this? Are you going to
It's elimination, Brad.
elimination? But
And then I'm going to call the one for
if you win, do you pick?
I'm sorry. Yes, correct.
All right.
You pick who goes first.
So the last one standing.
Yeah.
Gets to pick.
So we call it now?
No,
No,
you
so
have
you
to flip
shake
the
it up.
coin first.
So you
Okay.
can do whatever you want.
So flip the coin,
Okay.
And you put it down.
Okay.
and then we'll go around the table. I have tails.
Heads.
Heads.
Okay, so I'm the odd man out. So
Yep, so it's
I'm
just you
out.
and I.
So
Oh,
it's just,
geez.
and we usually, when we get down to the last two, it's the best 2 out of 3, and you have to put your coins down, and you either call odd or even.
Odd or even. You call
So are you going to match, which would be even, or odd,
This is
which would be
really
tails?
complicated.
No, it's really easy.
I'm gonna be even.
it. Okay.
Okay.
What do you have?
I have heads.
Heads.
All right. So you
won.
win. You're up 1-0.
Woo! Let's go 3 times.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
mine
if
is
you want to
good.
do it like the BOEYE boys do.
Okay. I still don't understand this odds even thing, but it's okay.
We're gonna be odd. I have tails.
I have heads.
1-1.
Okay, 1-1. So whoever wins this one.
I have no
wins
idea
all.
why I just won or lost, but we're gonna go with it.
Because they didn't match. Odd is they don't
Yeah.
match. Even is that they do match.
Oh, okay. I'm going with. Do I go?
Yep.
I'm going with even.
Okay.
I have tails.
I've heads, so I win.
So you win. So Peachy gets to pick. So
My
you're up
topic.
1-0. And that can happen a lot of times during the lunch that you're up 1-0 and you're feeling pretty good.
Well, now if y'all want to start a new tradition, if you want to have a Christmas lunch or an Easter lunch or a Thanksgiving lunch or a
Or how about just a Friday afternoon
just
lunch?
Friday night lunch with your friends, play quarters, decide who pays the bill.
And the rule is as long as you have a credit card, then you're in the game.
Right. That's exactly right.
I think you. Who was
Cousin
the-
Rob
Yeah.
came when he was, I think, in college, or maybe he just got his very first job out in Colorado. And I think he was in college. And he was bragging about having an American Express card. So my dad said, "You're in."
Yep. And the rest is history.
Did he lose that year too?
I'm pretty sure he did, or they wouldn't have kept telling the
Right.
story. But I think, that was the one thing is that ever since then, the aunts have kind of put the kibosh there that as long as you're in college, you're not eligible to pay the bill.
You're
All right.
forced into it.
Well,
And for you that are a home keeping score, this is my second time winning and picking the topic first, so 2-0. But I kind of want to dig into our title and the family business aspect. I kind of want to share some just stories.
do I have to get tissues for this? You didn't.
No,
I
I
don't think
really
it's
think
sad.
it might be great.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think we should kind of only dive into our story about our family business.
Do I need this quarter anymore?
It's mine actually.
Oh,
you didn't
your-
have one, so
your
give it
quarter,
back.
yeah.
Yeah, yours
Yeah,
is mine
yeah.
too. So thanks.
But yeah, so yeah, we could talk about our family and our business and tell some stories. But also for all the people out there that are also, in a family business, maybe you can learn something and we can share stories of how we go day to day of kind of shifting from personal and business. So we kind of have told our story already of why we joined real estate, but I think we should go all the way back to our family business lineage and talk about Grandma Margaret and what she started and how we got to 4 generations here in our business.
Which is super, super unique thing. So she's not my Grandma Margaret. I never had the blessing of knowing her, but I heard she was quite the woman. So I'm sure we're going to tell some of those stories today. But the very ironic thing is that I have a Grandma Margaret too. She wasn't in real estate. But
Well, ironically, I had 2 Grandma Margarets.
Right. Exactly.
Very popular name
Yeah.
back then.
So anyway, if we had a child, it would have been named Margaret. PT, you're still up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I totally agree. Well, and I never had the pleasure either, but you just hear the stories and you see all the things that she did, and it's truly incredible to kind of see where it was then and where it is now, because it's completely different. And we'll get to when we get to my grandpa about some of the funny things that I've talked to him about. But yeah, I mean, it all started in some of my most vivid memories of her, that how hard it was for her to actually just be respected within the industry, right? And that she had to create not only a name for herself, but for women as a whole in the industry, which is pretty incredible. And she went from, building her name and then allowing other people to also succeed as a woman in the industry as well, which is incredible.
Yeah, it's
Gives me goosebumps.
quite the journey. Yeah.
And to just kind of play off that again, I didn't know Grandma BOEYE, but I've heard plenty of stories. And I, being a female, I really wish I would have in the business and carrying on the BOEYE name by marriage. I wish I would have met her, because everyone tells me all the time that I have a lot of similarities in my personality style and the way that I am a little slightly type A. And I just don't put up with crap, right? Can I say crap on a podcast?
Of course you can.
Okay, good. So I think that is very cool. And when I read stories, and like, we are so blessed that your mom and dad, and I'm sure your grandma and your grandpa and your uncle and your aunt all kept so many commemoratives and so much collateral from all the years of their business. And we went through that a couple years for a video we did that if anybody wants to check out, it's on our link tree. It's kind of the history of our family with some of that. So, reading some of those things in articles and stories, and reading letters, right? There's letters in there that were written from your grandma to your dad, and, your dad to other people within the industry, and your grandma to other people, and your mom. And it's very cool but yeah, men just didn't really want women in business back when Grandma BOEYE got in the business. And the story, I believe, goes, they even tried to not allow her membership into the board of realtors because she was a woman.
Right.
And how'd that go, Brad?
Well, and luckily my grandpa was a Rock Island County judge. So, it was one of those where he said, I know that you don't want her in, but there are laws out there that you can't do this.
Right.
And I really think that was a blessing that Grandma came along and tried this, and obviously not just tried it, but was extremely successful. But also my grandpa completely had her back too, which back then in the 1950s, it was 1954, August 25th was when she was licensed in real estate. And those of you that were around back then know that women, a lot of the times, they were not in the workforce, and they, let alone, were not in the real estate business, which was a man's business back then. Banking, real estate, and insurance were almost 100% male in the 1950s. So quite a maverick. And she was just an amazing woman. There's lots of stories, which if you want me to get into one of them, which I always think is kind of cool. The one where she had an offer on a house and she knew that it wasn't going to get
They were avoiding
presented.
her.
Yes. So what my grandmother did was she went to the steps of the office of the agent, knowing that that was back in the day when everybody went to the office every day, knowing that agent was going to walk into the front door, and she handed the offer. And,
At 6 a.m, right?
It was
she was
early.
sitting there.
Yeah. And that's just one of the many stories of how she was not going to take no for an answer on anything. And she was a very strong woman, but yet very caring. Like everybody that I ever talked to that knew her said that she had a special ability to connect with people too, and had a lot of people follow her as well. And you wonder if there weren't people like her around this country in all these industries that were willing to take the chance, where would we be today?
Right.
And now, I think, I don't have the exact stats, but I'm almost positive there's more females in residential real estate than there are males. And a lot of them are the leaders of our industry. And you have to point back to people like Grandma that were able to give them this opportunity.
If she was the very first female broker in the state of Illinois, correct? correct?
No, in the Quad Cities.
I'm sorry, the Quad Cities. Yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean, still a huge accomplishment.
Yeah.
And when they first started, weren't they insurance and real estate?
Yeah, so back in the 1950s, and you'll see this on a few real estate companies, but basically back then, most real estate companies had insurance with the real estate. So that was all in one. You would get your house and you would get your insurance. Now, with all the law changes, a lot of them have got rid of their insurance parts. And the reason why Grandma's company got rid of that was when my dad graduated college, he came back and worked on the insurance side. And my grandmother had a stroke and was unable to run the residential real estate brokerage every day. So my dad was then told that you have got to run the residential real estate brokerage, and the insurance part just wasn't quite as important anymore. And they were able to, as a team, grow that very big, that if you ask my dad, and we will have him on here sometime, Grandma was really good at letting him know what he wasn't doing correctly. So
Seems like a trend that came down the line.
came right on down.
Wait,
And-
I'm not blood, but I still do that.
Yeah, and she just wanted to make sure that he wasn't going to mess it up. And he clearly didn't mess it up. Ended up being the largest real estate company on the Illinois Quad Cities. But a lot of that had to do with Grandma still in the background giving a lot of advice. She wasn't real mobile at the end of her life. I was 12 when she actually passed away. And I have a lot of great memories of going over to Steep Meadow and sitting on her lap. And, my grandmother liked to ask a lot of questions. Lots of
Uncle
questions.
Bob.
Yeah, well, that would be my Uncle Bob's mother. So, yes, there was a lot of Uncle
Bob
Bob
was the questioner.
and Grandma BOEYE. Lots of questions wanted, but, was always one that got right to the point, too. I mean, they always joked, a lot of the realtors did, that when my grandma would call, she would tell you what needed to be said and then would just hang up. She was done. So
There was no buy or anything.
there was nobody. No. Which I always thought was interesting. When I very first got in the business, there were a few older agents that would really do that. Now, clearly, I mean, it's not quite as acceptable to be done when you're done, but yeah.
Well, and one of the coolest things that I think, there's a couple of cool things that I think about is number one, when I first got in the business with you, and I didn't really know. I mean, I knew, because we got married, and obviously when I got in the business with you, but like I just didn't really understand because I'm not from. I mean, I'm from here, but I'm from a farm in DeWitt, north of here. So like the Quad Cities was like the big city to us, so I didn't know things the same way I did, and I definitely didn't know the Illinois side of the Quad Cities the same way that I do now. And I remember going on listing appointments with you. I specifically remember the Huttons in Moline, and I remember that she was like, "Oh my gosh, your grandma! I knew her," And then these people go down to their basements or their garages, and they pull out these, old BOEYE real estate signs, and I would think, "Oh, I've seen all the BOEYE real estate signs." Nope, we'd be to somebody else's house, and it'd be a different version of the BOEYE real estate sign, and it's super cool because we have a lot of those in our possession now. But that was the other thing, and I also remember getting in the business and people saying, when you were a realtor and then you would come and you were, relatively still new, I guess, in the business. And they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, I remember you used to come with your grandma or your dad and your little blue eyes and your chubby little cheeks."
Yeah, that was kind of an issue for the first few years of my real estate business. That's how a lot of them looked at me. You're correct.
The little kid that just tagged along. Because people don't realize this about your mom and dad. Like, you are how much younger than your siblings?
My brother is 9 years and 11 months older than me, so let's just call it 10 years. And my sister is about 15 years older than I am.
Yeah, so your parents were quite a bit older, so you really did, go to everything with them.
I hung out in the real estate office a lot of the time, a lot of times at night. One of the things I joke about, but when I used to walk into the real estate offices back in the early 80s, I remember the haze of smoke.
Oh,
around
gross.
the entire real estate office, and people had ashtrays on their desk, and there were ashtrays on the conference room table, if you can believe that.
Yes.
So a lot of changes there for sure. And also those good old trusty MLS books.
Yep.
Andrea, there was not the World Wide Web back then.
It was not, no. And I have to go back because this is even crazier, but I had a showing maybe a year ago, and we're going out to the garage, and I flipped the lights on. Something comes out of the corner of my eye. It was this green thing, and grandma's signs were green. And there was this huge, it had to be like a commercial listing sign or something, but they used it as like plywood in the garage, and it was a BOEYE sign. And it was kind of funny because before we walked in, it was a newer client. I was explaining, the whole 4 generations. And I'm like, you guys wouldn't believe this, but this was the first generation sign. It was just used as plywood in a garage, which is hilarious. But yeah, it just is be able to go all the way back to that and show people how cool our story is.
And the history of it. And just to really kind of think too, and we didn't even mention that she started this real estate company, and you would think she would have brought a couple of gentlemen along with her. And no, it was the first one with her was Helen Criswell, who is one of our relatives. And the 2 of those ladies, I don't think I would have messed with them. I mean, they were determined.
Is it
that
kind of
they
like
were
me and Sarah now?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Watch out.
And then later on, and I don't know if I've ever even told you guys this, but there is a really good agent, John Loquist. His mother, Allie Loquist, joined too. And there were a lot of women at that company. And
Mary
now,
Lager Blaine.
Yeah, I mean, later on for sure. But now when you look at this, the makeup of that company is the makeup of a lot of companies now,
Sure.
right? I mean, so they were just ahead of the game by, we're
75 years?
Yeah.
5 years later. Almost, yeah.
Almost, yeah.
70-ish. Yeah. I mean, so it's incredible how they were so far ahead of the times. And I think, one of the reasons why my dad was so successful in running his real estate business after my grandmother retired was that he had a great respect for women in the real estate business. And I just can't even imagine nowadays, I mean, how those guys used to think that if we didn't have the women in the real estate business right now, it wouldn't be the same business at all. I mean, it wouldn't be nearly as good.
Well, yeah, I mean, look at how your business just skyrocketed when you had a woman join you.
True story. Behind every good man is an even stronger woman. Right?
Well, and the other thing that I think is super cool that I need to share, and I want to get into some of the fun stories too, but you and I remember this day, it's because I was in the process of applying for my license. I'd already passed my test and I was going in to apply for my license. And so I was kind of researching some of the history of when your dad got his license, whatever. And it was just mind blowing to us because, we thought that it was the right choice for me to join you in the business and continue that. But, you're so little, both of you being commission based and, oh my gosh, and whatever, just getting married. But we went in, and the date that your grandmother got her license, like we just said, was August 25th, 1954, which is crazy because we met on August 25th and we got married 2 years later on August 25th. And we didn't know that date.
No idea.
And that's just kind of, it literally, I think we both kind of started just crying almost. Yeah. Like it was just felt meant to be, right?
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah, no, that's a very cool story. And I'm just looking back, just kind of thinking back at that office there on, when I was really young, and I don't know that I've even ever driven by it, but the original office when I was a little kid was right by the Shell station on 18th Avenue and 30th Street, right by McDonald's.
You've driven me by.
It's a chiropractic office now.
Just so we're clear, you are a BOEYE, so you've driven me by everything and anything.
I tend to like landmarks.
Yeah, and you told me what it is.
But
and
I remember when the new office opened,
10
like
times.
in the early 80s, that was the coolest thing. I mean, it was the most modern thing you had ever seen. And if I recall correctly, my great uncle, Leon Wall, was the one that...
I've never heard that name before.
You've never heard? Well, Leon was an architect.
Have you, PT?
No.
He was an architect.
We're learning something here, PT.
Right.
So he designed the office, and then he also designed our old house on 31 Wildwood Drive.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
We should get into the Wildwood story in a little bit here of that transition of the business. But come on, PT, you have to have some fun stories to share.
Well, the one that resonates with me the most is definitely the sitting on the front steps, and that just sums it all up for me right there. Is how determined and how gate opening she was for women, which was so cool. All my stories lie with the man who also shares the same name with me. who is the second generation, who is Price Bowie, he asks me a lot of questions all the time. Every time I see him, it's always a nice little checkup to see how everything's going. But we briefly kind of talked about how he came in the insurance, and then once great grandma to me had a stroke and he had to kind of take over the residential side, he then built out the business on the Illinois side and then merged with another company on the Iowa side here in the Quad Cities to basically take over and go from there. But that's how his kind of big role was, and kind of continue our name.
Yeah, the story goes, and I've heard it numerous times, is that BOEYE was the largest on the Illinois side, and the other brokerage was the largest on the Iowa side. And there was 3 generations in that brokerage. And the first 2, your dad knew both, but they would come to him, the second would come to him and say, come on now, if we would just, join the forces here, we could take over the Quad Cities. And your dad said no, how many times?
About 2 or 3 times. And then my mom used to always like to tell the story.
I love this story.
Wined and dined them at the Black Hawk Hotel. They used, at the top of the hotel, now I live in condos, but it was called the Gun Club. And they went in there, gave them a couple drinks.
Your mom said she had some
dinner.
Manhattans. And she got in the car and said,
What did we just do?
What did we just do? Did we, what? Huh?
So it was, a great deal, and it was a relationship that I know that my dad really, really cherished with that company. And it's amazing. None of that would have ever happened though. We go back to Grandma BOEYE again. I mean, none of that would have ever happened. And I'm sure that I wouldn't be in the real estate business right now if it wasn't for Grandma BOEYE. That most of our family was in law. So I probably would have really taken that road. But
well, and actually, I mean, if I remember correctly, your dad, obviously your brother, PT, your dad, didn't want to do real estate.
Well, my brother, when he came back here to the Quad Cities, briefly considered, or before he ended up coming back, I think it may have been right after college, he had considered commercial real estate, but that just wasn't his thing. And he really took the right path, obviously. Not everybody's meant for real estate, and he obviously really does well with his own business, the Hungry Hobo.
And your sister wasn't, I mean, she kind of did it, but wasn't.
She was in the real estate business.
And then your dad had talked to you, but your dad talked to you, and you were like 10 or 12, right, when this happened, and you really had no
I mean,
interest.
I, at that time, wanted to be probably 10 or 12 years old. At that time,
you wanted to be a weatherman?
I wanted to be a pro baseball player, probably.
We all at some point.
Weatherman was one of them, yeah.
But so they merged in 1993, and then your dad continued to run our previous brokerage until he retired. And
07.
Yeah, which was the year I got in the business, which was kind of ironic. And then they kind of consulted for a while. But the other thing that I want to talk about is just we talk about how we've been through you've been in the business for 25 years, so you were through the financial kind of meltdown and all those things, and your grandpa, your dad, and what they went through in the 80s. And I mean, I don't know if you've heard any of these stories, PT.
I mean,
Yeah, so, and I hate to be the storyteller every time here, but obviously I lived through a lot of it.
But it's also super cool, I think, for anybody that owns a business, whether it's a family business or your business, it's really important to know that, sometimes stuff, it gets tough, right? And the only way you come out better is by going through those tough times, and they make you stronger and they make you better in your profession, your business. So I think it's really important for people to hear. I think people just assume, even with us, right? BOEYE, and it's just been easy, and they're 4 generations, and so the business is just handed to them. And we've had some difficult years, and I think it's important to share. Your dad almost lost the company in the 80s.
So early 80s, 81, 82. My dad and uncle and a local developer in the Quad Cities, Valley Construction, and a couple other people got into Wildwood, which is on the Rock Island Moline border. And now it's a beautiful neighborhood that nobody would have ever known the story. But in the early 80s, those of you that are old enough that remember, that's when the IH plant in Rock Island closed down. The Case plant in East Moline lost a lot of jobs, which is now the Rust Belt. And then there was a Caterpillar plant out in Parkview that closed down all within a year. And there was always a joke in the early 80s. The last one in the Quad Cities turn off the lights,
Yeah.
right? So in 81, 82, they got into this land development thing at Wildwood. And that's when everything literally crashed, like right after that. So nobody was buying anything. Well, I really shouldn't say anything. New homes, they certainly weren't doing that. So my dad and uncle said, shoot, I mean, we need to move out of our houses. We lived in Watch Hill at the time, and I was a kindergartner at Earl Hansen Elementary School in Rock Island.
That's an important detail, PT.
It is.
Well, yeah. I mean,
Time and
this is how big of a deal that was.
Okay.
So at that point, I was told when I was halfway through kindergarten that we're moving you out of Earl Hansen, and you're like going to Eugene Field now, and we're also going to move houses. And I was like, oh, okay, houses, fine. So we went over and looked at our new house, which was not a house; it was a condo in Wildwood. My mom and dad had 3 kids at home at the time. My sister would have been actually in college, but she was living in the basement. And my brother was in high school, so not ideal living in a condo when you're 5, 6 years old, because when you're a 5 or 6-year-old boy, guess what you want to do?
You want to be outside.
You want to be outside. So we were creative and we got all that done. But then when you're that age, they don't tell you why. And not that I would have even understood it. But later I found out that my mom and dad made the decision that they had to make it look like there was activity going on in Wildwoods. So we did that, moved in to the condo, and my dad comes home and tells my mom, well, good news and bad news, Sue. And he said, everybody's paid at the office. That's the good news. The bad news is there's nothing left over. And my mom looked at him with 3 kids at home once again and said, okay, but if you ever come home and tell me that again, you're going to have to get a real job.
Real job.
So this was 81, 82.
So he didn't have a real job at the time.
I didn't see my dad a whole lot during those couple of years. I do remember that he was working and doing everything he possibly could to make money, and he was involved in everything just to try and make the Quad Cities a better place, because at that time it was really struggling. So hindsight now, looking back, I was actually told those stories, I think, after I was out of high school, actually. So I didn't know how dire of a situation it was up until then. But like you just mentioned, you have to go through those tough times. And when you get over the mountain to the other side of it, you're a stronger person. And I know that made my mom and dad much stronger people. And it made my dad an incredible business person, and he remembered all those hard times. And I really think when you go through those hard times, you go back to those hard times and you say that I don't ever want to be there again.
Well, and the other thing on that, which I don't remember specifics on this, but I do remember over the years, which this goes back to, we've done podcasts on loyalty and, the company you're with and those things and who you partner with and whatnot. And I remember people that have come up that I don't even know that have, talked to you or with your dad, even when your mom was still here, like when those things were happening and some of those people were having extreme financial difficulties, that your dad would sacrifice things for your own family to make sure that his agents were taken care of. And I think that really speaks volumes about how he cares about that your family cares about this community and how ingrained they are on that. Because not every person would do that, right? No, people don't sacrifice their own needs for others very often, but that's just the kind of people that your family is. And I know that probably makes you both uncomfortable, me saying that, but it's a very touching thing to hear those stories and to know that. And it's very cool that's obviously your dad was taught that from someone, and I'm assuming it was your grandma and grandpa.
No question about it. Yeah, that's the way they were. They were always, as I remembered, I lost my grandpa before I was even born, so we were in the hospital with each other. But knowing grandma, she was a very proud person that loved the Quad Cities, right. And wanted to make sure that that they were always doing their part. And I really think they passed it on to my dad too. There's no question about that.
Well, and I think if you take anything away from today's episode, it's about taking care of the people around you. I mean, that's the biggest thing is if you make sure that the people that are working for you through the tough times, at some point that it's going to come back to you. We talked about it in other episodes too, about putting out as much as you can and it will come back in full fold at some point, right? So like, I've seen it from my father when the restaurant businesses had to deal. I mean, everyone had to deal with something during COVID. It was a disaster. But restaurant businesses, it definitely opened my eye to that. And he made sure that every single person that worked under him was taken care of. And the same goes for Grandpa and everybody else. And it just tells you that everyone's going to go through a tough point in their business, multiple tough points. If you take care of those people that are with you, it will come back in full fold and it will just show everybody the true person you really are.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And when you have tough times, those that make it and that make it even better on the other side of it, they dig in deeper. Whereas the ones that aren't totally in it or they're just not made for it, that's when they get out, right? And if you can make it through those hard times, you're going to be stronger.
Yeah. And I think that when you were speaking that PT, it kind of makes me think a little bit of, in just the last couple of years, I mean, obviously we always, when we thought about how us growing or our retirement, exit strategy someday, I know most realtors, work till they're 90. I love what I do, but I don't want to work till I'm 90. I have other things that I'm very passionate about that I want to also give my time and talent to, but I do love what we do. But obviously we were thrilled when you decided to get into the business and follow the BOEYE tradition and be the fourth generation realtor. But it's also, in the last couple of years, especially in making the switch to real, for multiple reasons, but we would have probably made a switch a little sooner. There just wasn't the right fit for us and COVID happened. And also we really didn't have your dad's blessing, right? Yeah. Your dad, going back to the loyalty thing, it was so hard for him because we obviously, BOEYE had merged with our previous brokerage and you had been there for, 23 years. And that was very hard to make that separation, but it was just time for us personally. It was nothing personal against that brokerage. It was just, we were moving in a different direction. One of those things was we knew that we wanted to continue being able to train and mentor agents. We wanted to take that next step and not just our own personal sales, but just other agents and continuing that. I think that we have a lot of knowledge and things to give to that. And I think we've been very intentional. We've said this from the beginning, people are like, oh, you're growing a team, and we don't have any desire. And I think your dad was really the same way. And your grandma, in the way that I can see, is that if you were a BOEYE realtor, you were part of that family, right? Yeah. Intentionally hired. And if you weren't going to be part of the team and collaborate and work together, then you probably weren't the right fit.
And they were always about, I read an advertisement about why you ought to join BOEYE Realtors. It was in one of those things.
Can't wait.
And they were very much so, quality over quantity, which is what we love about Real too, is that they don't want you to just go out and attract every agent possible. Yep. They want you to bring in good people and good real estate agents, which is a lot like what they built BOEYE Realtors on, was quality over quantity.
Well, and the other thing that the culture award, right? That's something else that they do, that they want you to be a part of your community and do good things for your community. So I think it's just where we aligned as the BOEYE kind of
attributes.
I don't know. Why can't I think of the word I'm looking for?
I know what you're saying.
Not mission. Anyway, somebody will figure it out down the road. I'm not sure, but
core belief.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. There was a lot of things we aligned with, right? Mm-hmm. But I just think that's really kind of cool because the people that are part of our our larger marketing group are all. It's just the way that we operate together is a beautiful thing. Yeah. And our BOEYE group team, again, same thing. We just are close knit.
And it's all those mentors, right, that we've really had in the past too. I mean, you want to not just bring them in, but you want to help them do what they want to do too. Yep. You want to help them reach their goals, which, a lot of real estate companies, when you're talking about the numbers, which BOEYE Realtors was never like that. They didn't have to be the biggest, but they ended up being the biggest.
You share those things now. You hate it.
Yeah. I mean, but now it's that's what we love. That's what I love about Real is it reminds me a lot of when I was younger. Like once again, the quality over the quantity. And what I mean by that is quality in that we're not just going to send agents out there that don't know what they're doing. Like they're going to get trained, all the rest of that. And that was big. One of the things that my dad was big on was education.
Right.
And that had to come from Grandma BOEYE, right? I mean, that was, yeah.
No doubt. And I think that we've talked about how, being ahead of the curve through each generation and being able to adapt. The real estate model has completely changed now. It's much easier to find and see who people really are via social media, the internet, all of that kind of stuff. And so it's more important now than ever to surround yourself with people that align with your core beliefs, right? And so just going back to those basics of what great grandma laid, of being that core belief of just being a good person and working hard is the biggest thing. And that allows us to do that, right? Yep. It gives us the power to attract good realtors.
Absolutely.
Well, in PT, you are, and I know, I mean, we say it to you, but I don't think we say it to you often enough. I mean, I can't tell you, I know no one can see me getting emotional on. Well, I guess you could if you're watching YouTube. Just how people, even when you were interning with us, right? Like people would come and they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, he's such a nice young man, and he's so polite, and he's so caring, and whatever." And that goes forward into like our marketing group office now. I mean, how many people come up to Brad and I that are just like, "He is such a nice young man. He has such a great career." And the thing that's so awesome to watch in your social, you are who you are. I mean, you are genuinely yourself, and all the things that you're doing will just continue to bless you in your business moving forward, and will just continue the BOEYE name in the real estate market because you're doing things the right way. And we're just so proud of you and what you are building for the fourth generation. And we just, can't wait till we celebrate 100 years when we're, 90?
90, yeah.
And you're going to be throwing the biggest party ever, rolling us around in our wheelchairs.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, I mean, to wrap this up, going back to Grandma again, but, all this was laid by her.
Right.
And obviously the way we were all raised, that Grandma and Grandpa raised my dad a certain way. And obviously my mom and dad raised myself and my brother and sister a certain way, which has been passed down to you too. I mean, this is, so going back, I'm just trying to tie this up that Grandma, she was a big part in the way that you are too. I mean, it's that's the way that the family heritage works, is that good example after good example after good example.
Well, and that's why the business continues, right?
Correct.
Like there's not, especially when you get into real estate. I mean, I don't know. I guess I would have to research this. I just don't know of too many second generation, third generation, and now a fourth generation that are not just in the real estate business, right? But successful in the real estate business.
Well, they always joke that the third generation is usually the one that messes it all up. So we've made it to the fourth.
There we go. That's right. Yeah, and so you've got a good picture of our first and second generations. Obviously, we're 3 and 4. And you'll hear our story as we continue on through our episodes. But it's important to lay the foundation where it all started. And another thing to go back to it is, if you're in a family business, if you're a generation down the line and you're struggling or you're trying to find a way to pivot to improve and be ahead, I would say go back to your basics. There's a reason why that first generation or second generation was successful. What did they do? Was it just being a good human being? Was it being hyper local and invested in your community? It's probably what it was. So just remember that there's a reason why your name is known in the community, and just continue that on.
And everybody has those people, right? I mean, so you want to look at those great examples that you have, and we're very lucky that we've had a lot of them. And starting in my lifetime, the remembrance of Grandma BOEYE.
Right.
Amen to that.
That's a wrap.